from the campus of Westfield State University. This is 89.5 FM, WSKB, Westfield. Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Westfield Bank. For more than 160 years, Westfield Bank has been an important community presence and commercial leader in the Pioneer Valley. With convenient full banking services in Westfield, West Springfield, East Longmeadow, Agawam, Feeding Hills, Springfield, Southwick, as well as Enfield and Granby, Connecticut, visit us on the web at westfieldbank.org.
Good morning, Westfields. It is 6:05. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses. My name is Tina Gorman. I'm your Wake Up Wednesday host. I am joined this morning in this very empty, large room here. Pete Coles is with me, chairman of the board, producer of our show, and we are broadcasting live from Westfield High School.
Yes.
Not Westfield Technical Academy in our regular studio, but we are at the high school. They have their annual science fair here today. They're all set up. The projects are all set up, and it looks like there are hundreds of them. I mean, there are a lot.
There are a lot, yeah. And there's I think there's over 60 from the Technical Academy today, which is it's actually pretty cool that there's so many now from the Technical Academy. Years ago, there was no nothing at all. Yeah, nothing at all.
Representation from there. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I was actually a judge for this last year.
Okay.
And I declined this year only because it's an all-day affair.
I mean, you're here all day. Yeah.
Well, what we were laughing about last year, and Joe Rouse and I were talking about this. Joe will be a guest on my show a little bit later on this morning.
Director is he judging too? Or?
No, but we did it last year, and he didn't for the same reason because it's an all-day affair. And literally, Pete, last year we looked around. I think every department head and the mayor, we were all judges.
Yep.
We're all kind of looking at each other at lunch going, who's running the city? There was
maybe we should stagger.
We need to stagger this a little bit. So, that's kind of, and also my program director's been a little under the weather this week, so I'm doing coverage.
You need to be in house then.
I need to be in house later on today, but I have to say it was a really fun experience. And as a judge, you have these score sheets. You go around, you meet with the students, they explain their projects, and there's a lot of diversity with these science projects. I have, some are climate related and some are food related, and they're just really sort of all over the map, which makes it a lot of fun and very exciting. And it is this real coming together of the community because there are just so many judges, and there were a lot of judges from outside of the Westfield community as well, which was really kind of fun. Last year I had lunch with somebody who was professor at one of the, not Westfield State, at one of the Springfield colleges. I can't remember which one now, but and it's kind of, they just tried to pull in people who they thought would be unbiased and sort of scientifically minded. So it's a lot of fun, and I know we are broadcasting live here this morning because the superintendent, Stefan Zaporowski, will be here later on. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're doing a Superflow show, so they're doing.
Yeah, so we'll have a lot of
Tiger Westfield
Talk
Tech Academy, and they're all kind of. That's why there's so many microphones on
there are a lot of microphones here, so we're just going to use 3 of them this morning for my guests and for me. But so later on, so starting between 8 and 10, we'll have a lot of the school folk on.
Yep.
And they'll be talking a lot more about the science fair. But we also have a full slate this morning. We have with us this morning Dr. Akinyele Lovelace, our resident primary care physician, and we are happy to have him back. It's been several months since we've seen him.
Yeah.
He's been away and, busy and doing some other things as primary care physicians do. So he will be here first hour in about 10 minutes or so, hopefully.
I told him where to come in yesterday. I had an appointment with him yesterday because he's my primary care
And you're allowed
physician.
to say that. He's not allowed to say that, but you're not breaking any HIPAA rules.
Well,
would be.
I gave him permission.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a difference. So
we talk about it.
But less than Bob, but we talk about it.
Thank God. We won't go there.
So I was with him yesterday, and I told him to come in the front door, and we'd come right into the gym.
Yes.
He's never been to the high school before, so he's not sure exactly where to go.
Right, and I texted him and said, look for the gym. It's very well marked, and he'll see my. There's only one car in the parking lot. It's mine.
As of right now,
there.
yes.
Well, and the funny thing is, I rode all the way around the building, and I saw your car, and I thought, well, I could sneak in the back door, but then I thought, Akinyele's not going to know where to come. So,
yeah, I tried to tell him the back door, and he's like,
so I said to him, so I said, just look for my car, and I told him to come in the gym entrance, and I said, there's one door unlocked, you can find it.
He's probably listening to us on the way in.
Right. But I told him, I said, listen, if you run in, he texted me back, okay. I said to him, if you run into problems, just, text for help, and one of us will come and find you.
Sure.
We'll escort you in.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so we have a full slate, and then second hour, as I mentioned before, Joe Rouse, director of the health department, will be with us. We'll be talking about all things coronavirus, which is really starting to, it's just starting to hit the forefront. So.
They're making this big thing about it. It's all scary, but we have the influenza every year. That's basically the same thing.
Well, we're going to talk about that, Pete. We're going to talk about what exactly all this is, but also what does the state do? What do the public health departments do for anything like this?
Infectious disease,
coronavirus, whether it's the flu, all of that, because we kind of need to know what the protocol is. And I was at a meeting yesterday, and Nina Bars was there, who is head of dispatch, and they have a protocol that's been passed down and so forth. So, all right. So we have a lot to cover. We have a lot of ground to cover. Before we get started on all of that, I'm going to run through the famous birthdays, because a lot of our music is based around this, and just so that I don't run out of time before we start playing these songs. So first of all, today is February 12th, and if you recall, back in the old days, way back when, Pete, probably before you were a kid, but when I was a kid in school, we used to actually get the president's birthdays off. So we would get February 12th off as Lincoln's birthday, and then Washington's birthday off later in the month. So it is the birthday of the late Abraham Lincoln. He was the 16th president of the United States, born on this day in 1809 in Hodgenville, Kentucky. He died on April 15th, 1865 at the age of 56. Regularly regarded as one of the great American presidents, Abraham Lincoln became president in 1861 amid a crisis over slavery in the Union. Shortly after his election, 7 southern states seceded and formed the Confederate States, beginning the American Civil War. An incredibly astute politician, Lincoln outmaneuvered several political enemies in his time. His oratory and writing appealed to the American people, particularly his Gettysburg Address, which became an iconic endorsement of democracy. As the war came to an end, Lincoln made several moves to abolish slavery. In 1863, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which made more than 3 million slaves free. In early 1865, he pushed Congress to pass the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which permanently ended slavery. Shortly before the end of the conflict, John Wilkes Booth assassinated Lincoln as he watched a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. And again, he was just 56 years old when he was assassinated.
I watched a whole special about John Wilkes Booth. That was an interesting how he came to get to that point and things like that. And then the escape, and it was like a Hollywood movie, but it was real life.
Did you? Clearly a sort of documentary type.
Yeah. It was. I think it was on the History
or?
Channel or something.
That does sound interesting.
I just happened to see it, and then the hunt for John Wilkes Booth was really cool.
And you always
created a lot.
You do kind of wonder, like, what drives somebody to that point.
Yeah.
So Did you see it recently, Pete, or was it on
I think it was like a year or two ago.
All
I think I saw it.
Maybe one we can find on demand.
Sure.
All right. It is also the birthday of the late Lorne Greene, actor, singer, born February 12th, 1915 in Ottawa, Canada. He died on September 11th, 1987 at the age of 72. The first of Lauren Green's continuing TV roles was as the patriarch Ben Pa Cartwright in Bonanza. Thank you, Pete, for that audio.
Sorry, I was a little loud.
That's okay. The first 1 hour Western series filmed in color. The show ran for 14 years, making Green a household name.
I grew up with that show.
So did I.
Yeah.
I loved. My dad was a big Bonanza fan. Green played another patriarchal figure in the science fiction television series Battlestar Galactica, which ran 1978 to 79, and Galactica 1980, which obviously ran in 1980. In 2007, TV Guide listed Ben Cartwright as the nation's second most popular TV father, behind Cliff Huxtable. In the
Well, it's true. The character of Cliff Huxtable,
absolutely,
a little bit different than the actor of
absolutely, but that's okay. We're going with character. In the 1980s, Green devoted his energies to wildlife and environmental issues, including hosting and narrating the nature series Lauren Green's New Wilderness, a show that promoted environmental awareness.
Cool.
So, happy birthday to the late Lauren Green.
Mm-hmm.
It is also the birthday of Bill Russell, NBA basketball player. He was born February 12th, 1934 in West Monroe, Louisiana. He's 86 years old. Bill Russell's 6'9" frame earned plenty of attention in high school and college. In the fall of 1952, he tried out as a walk-on at the University of San Francisco and earned a scholarship. During his 3-year varsity career, in which he led the team to consecutive NCAA titles in 1955 and 1956, he averaged 20.7 points and 20.3 rebounds per game. Russell capped his amateur career by leading the U.S. men's basketball team to the gold medal at the 1956 Melbourne Olympics. That same year, in the NBA draft, the Boston Celtics orchestrated a deal for the draft rights to the young center. With Russell anchoring the middle of the floor, the Celtics finished with the NBA's best record in 1957 and went on to win the title over the Hawks in a tense 7-game series. It was the start of an unprecedented championship run for Russell and the Celtics. Over his 13 seasons in the league, the team played in 12 NBA finals, winning 11 of them. That is an amazing statistic.
The Red Auerbach run.
Yes, exactly. So happy 86th birthday to basketball player, Celtics player Bill Russell. It is also the birthday of Michael McDonald, singer, songwriter, keyboardist, record producer. He was born February 12, 1952 in St. Louis, Missouri. He's 68 years old today. Michael McDonald is known for his distinctive, soulful voice and as a member of the bands The Doobie Brothers and Steely Dan. McDonald wrote and sang several hit singles with the Doobie Brothers, including What a Fool Believes, Minute by Minute, and Taking It to the Streets. McDonald has also performed as a prominent backing vocalist on numerous recordings by artists including Steely Dan, Christopher Cross, and Kenny Loggins. He is considered an influential figure in the development of the yacht rock genre.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
right?
Yes, this was one of his singles.
Yeah.
He had a solo career as well. This is from a movie, actually.
Yeah, and I didn't remember this as being one of his singles. Go Pete.
Love this song.
Yeah, he also recorded for television and film soundtracks. McDonald is the recipient of 5 Grammy Awards and will be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of the Doobie Brothers this year in 2020.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
that was it. This was a great song from a movie called Running Scared.
Okay.
With
he did a variety of soundtracks.
With what's his name? The ballet dancer Gregory Hines. And the comedian, what's his name?
I don't know. Gregory Hines was a tap dancer, by the way.
Okay, so I knew he was a dancer.
Yep, and
I could picture him too.
Dancer.
I could picture the comedian. He hosted the Oscars a zillion times. He was in City Slickers.
Oh, Billy Crystal.
Yes, Billy Crystal.
Yeah. Okay.
They were detectives.
Love Billy
that ended up buying a bar in Key West.
It's so funny. That's so funny, though, that you brought up Billy Crystal, because Gary was just, my husband Gary was just mentioning the other day when we were talking about the Oscars, and we were talking about hosts.
The fact that they haven't had one.
Right, exactly. But he said to me, he goes, whatever happened to Billy Crystal? Like, you never hear about him anymore. And I said,
he's probably just making money somewhere.
I said he rode off into the sunset. He had his heyday. All right. It is also the birthday, February 12th, of Jim Cregan, singer, songwriter, bassist. He was born February 12th, 1970. He is 50 years old today. Jim Cregan is the bassist for Canadian alternative rock band Bare Naked Ladies,
Really?
which was formed in 1988.
Good band.
The band developed a cult following in Canada with their self-titled 1991 cassette, becoming the first independent release to be certified gold in Canada. Their debut album featuring the singles If I Had $1 Million and Brian Wilson was released in 1992. The band's style has evolved throughout their career, and their music now encompasses a mixture of pop, rock, hip-hop, and rap. Bare Naked Ladies have won multiple Juno Awards, which is the Canadian version of the Grammys.
Yep.
And they've been nominated for 2 Grammy Awards. The group has sold over 15 million records, including albums and singles, and they were inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame in March of 2018. One Week remains the band's most successful single. Other well-known singles include It's All Been Done, Pinch Me, and are you ready for this? Because we're going to play this later.
Okay.
The History of Everything, which is the theme song to the sitcom The Big Bang Theory.
Yes.
And it's a whole song. I mean,
Yeah.
The Big Bang Theory just
Oh, yeah.
plays like the first 30 seconds of it, but it's
We may play that again during the science fair.
Oh, I know. I just thought that's exactly what I thought. I thought, hell, this is the perfect song to play. We're at a science fair. It's Jim Cregan's birthday, Bare Naked Ladies. So we're going to play The History of Everything is the name of that song. So I thought that was really pretty cool. All right. And speaking of breaks, it is 6:19. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses. First song up is The Doctor by the Doobie Brothers, because we're going to hopefully bring in Dr. Lovelace. Let me just check my phone.
Well, let me play the music and we'll get
Play
to
the
break.
music. We'll see if he comes in.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Bay State Dental. Comprehensive dentistry at 14 convenient locations in Springfield, Chicopee, Longmeadow, West Springfield, Belchertown, East Longmeadow, Ludlow, Northampton, Greenfield, and Wilbraham, as well as 29 Broad Street in Westfield. Bay State Dental makes it a priority to help you achieve and maintain the healthy smile you deserve. On the web at baystatedental.com. Support for community radio on WSKB is provided by Betts Plumbing and Heating Supply Company, an independent, family-owned wholesaler serving Westfield for over 50 years, specializing in plumbing, heating, and industrial piping supplies. On the web at bettsplumbing.com or at 14 Coleman Avenue in Westfield. Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donuts shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
Hi, this is Harry Rock, host of Rock on Westfield every fourth Wednesday at 8 a.m. Tune in for my view of this place I call home.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 6:25. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses. My name is Tina Gorman. I'm your Wake Up Wednesday host, and we are broadcasting live this morning from Westfield High School.
The calm before the storm.
It is, and I told Doc and Yellow that Dr. Lovelace has joined us, our resident primary care physician, and it is just, it's kind of just the three of us back in the corner, and then Lauren Figge, who's coordinating this whole event,
yes,
is kind of on the complete.
She's starting to hover.
Opposite side of the gym. Yeah, she gets a little, antsy.
No, that's okay because she's got a lot. There's a lot to put on for this.
This is
a big event, so she should be hovering.
It's a huge event. So I was explaining to Dr. Lovelace that in about 2 hours, this place is going to be mobbed because you'll have all the students.
Yep.
And most of the projects have more than one student at a project. So
usually
there are over 100 projects. It looks like.
Oh, easily.
And you've got easily because this whole row is.
I think last year was 200 and something.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of projects, a lot of students, and then a lot of judges.
Yeah.
Because I've done the judge thing. But anyway. Welcome, Dr. Lovelace.
Yeah, it's been a while.
You found us. It has been a while. We've missed you.
Yeah, it was interesting coming back to high school.
Are you having flashbacks?
The gym floor. Yeah, I mean this is great.
Now, how was high school for you? We've never talked about your high school. Where did you go to high school?
I went to Tenafly High School in New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah, go Tigers.
Was it a big high school or
no? No, I don't know anymore. I guess we had a class of about we had a class of about 250.
Okay,
that's not bad.
That's
you know I mean?
fine.
So
So about 1,000 students in the school, something like that.
Yeah,
that was about my height.
I enjoyed it.
Did you?
Did
you do extracurricular activities?
Everything.
What did you do?
I did. So I did every sport, every season, just about. I was a kid that did. I played football and I was in the marching band. So
yeah, how'd you pull that one off?
I have never.
So I had to explain that to my coach.
I've never really ever.
Hey, coach, I can't go to the locker room.
I know. I've never run into anybody who.
Coach, you have a halftime show, coach. So my freshman year, my freshman year. I mean, your freshman year, you could. I wasn't on the JV or varsity team, so I was in the band. So
yeah.
And our games typically in your freshman year, your games are usually
like on a Monday afternoon.
Yeah, they're on a weird day. Yeah. And then my sophomore year, I was on the JV team, and then I still was in the band. So we would go to marching band tournaments, and then. Slowly but surely, like I still enjoyed it. So
so you worked your way right into that.
Coach, and then finally I was just, once I made the varsity team, he's like, all right, he called me AK.
You kind of have to make a decision here.
You can't leave during halftime, and I was fine with that. But I would go to the band competitions. I was like
fun. So what did you play? What was your instrument?
I played the trombone.
No kidding.
Yeah, I played trombone, baritone. I'm the kid that went to science camp and band camp. Yeah, I'm that guy.
I love it.
And then still like to play a lot of sports.
I love it.
But yeah, high school I was into everything.
A man with many interests.
I did. The class president.
Get out see here. Politics, sports, music, cultural arts. You did it all.
What else could you want to do?
My God.
I mean,
I was impressed before, but now I'm so much more impressed.
I tried. I really tried to get into everything.
You're knocking it right out of the park here.
and then track. So it was.
Now, what did you do in track? I'm married to a track nut, so.
Well, my dad was a track coach.
So there we go.
So I mean, I loved baseball. But for me, doing track with my dad, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, anything to do with your dad in high school.
You know
if you continue that relationship into high school, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So for me, I wasn't. I was kind of more of a bulkier guy, so he was a more tall, slender guy. So I ended up doing a lot of more track, like more field than track.
Yeah, field events,
javelin stuff.
Exactly.
Every now and then a discus thing. So for me, and then a lot of the jumping events, I did a lot of those.
Yeah.
So I thought it was cool just to hang out. Plus, it's a co-ed sport, so for me. In high school, it was springtime.
By the way, I think that was the other thing. For like the band thing. It's like, well, I could play football and sports and stuff, but of course the band is also co-ed.
It was, and you
had a lot of balance in your life.
You had to have the balance. I think that was important. So for me, I enjoyed every aspect of it.
I'm loving this. I am absolutely loving this. All right, so now. The girls and all the girls. So Christina and the girls will be here later. Christina's going to be a judge.
That'll be awesome.
Right, I know, because I have a friend's board meeting today, and she informed me that she can't be there because she's a judge.
Yeah.
And Pete and I were talking about it. Last year, I was a judge, and Joe Rouse is on the show after you. He'll be coming on second hour. Joe Rouse, the director of the health department, was a judge, as was pretty much every other department head in the city and the mayor. So there we were at lunchtime. We're all over here in the gym. We're all judging all these signs, and we're all kind of looking around going, who's running the city? Because everybody's in this gymnasium right now. So Joe and I decided this year perhaps we should stagger it just a bit.
Yeah,
maybe he and I would, actually go to do our regular jobs, and maybe we'll switch off for next year.
Yeah.
So, but Christina will have a lot of fun.
Oh, that's be great. Yeah.
And the girls are they're getting passed around, so that she'll bring them here, and then you'll take them.
Yeah, it's like a baton pass.
Yeah,
logistics transport.
That's what this is, and we worked it out.
Oh my God.
Which actually worked out great because you're coming to the same spot.
I know.
Same time.
I know, and that was the issue. It was like, well,
you're going to be freed up at the same time.
Do I drive back across town and be back?
This is great. This is perfect.
Just meet us here.
Drop them here.
And actually, it's good for the kids to see the high school too.
I encourage that. That kind of exposure, I think, is extremely important, just to kind of see what your options are in life, because or what your future may be. This is a pretty cool looking school. So
it's a big school.
I've never been in here before.
The pool is next door.
I saw that. I saw something called pool entrance. So.
I was gonna say, and I was like, wow, do I go to the pool? It's like not the pool entrance.
So I was really gonna text and be like, do I go to the pool entrance? I mean, this is a big place. I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah.
Because Pete was like, yeah, you just want to go all the way down to the very end, and I was like, all right, I went down to the end.
Yeah.
And then I
forgot about the pool entrance.
There's a lot of doors over here, and then you go to gymnasium entrance, and I was like, all right, this is. But then I was like, there's doors in the back. Do I start walking around?
I know.
Maybe I can flag you guys down.
But
it's already worked out.
We found you.
This is a ton of fun.
It's tougher when we did this one year, and there was a 2-hour delay. Oh. So the custodians still let us in.
Yeah.
But I was telling you yesterday, the bell went off. We're the only ones in the building, we know, and the bell went off, and it scared the bejesus out of me. Patrick Berry, Tony Dunn from WGBY.
You forget.
It's like birds. It's echoing in here. I'm like,
you do forget.
You forget about the bells.
Yeah, exactly. And all of a sudden,
there
they are. So they'll be ringing while we're here too.
There's nothing we can do about it.
All right, so it is 6:32. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM, radio for the Westfield Masses. So I think we're going to take our first break, and we're going to listen to the song by Dion. It's Abraham, Martin, and John, and this is in honor of the birthday of Abraham Lincoln, which is today.
Anybody here seen my old friend Abraham? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seemed good they die young. I just looked around and he's gone. Anybody here seen my old friend John? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seemed the good they die young. I just looked around and he's gone. Anybody here seen my old friend Martin? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seemed good they die young. I just looked round and he's gone. Didn't you love the things that they stood for? Didn't they try to find some good for you and me? And we'll be free someday soon. He's gonna be one day. Anybody here see my old friend Bobby? Can you tell me where he's gone? I thought I saw him walking up over the hill with Abraham and Martin and John.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Barnes & Noble College Bookstore in the Ely Campus Center, offering Westfield State t-shirts, sweatshirts, and gift merchandise, all of your academic needs, and offering textbook materials in new, used, ebook, and rental formats. Available at the bookstore on campus or online at westfieldstate.bncollege.com.
I'm Mark Auerbach. Join me every Friday at 8 a.m. for Arts Beat, where you'll meet interesting actors, directors, designers, and musicians here in Western New England.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. No, Pete lied. We are not broadcasting live from Westfield Technical Academy.
I can only do so much.
I know. No, we are broadcasting live this morning from Westfield High School. We are in the gymnasium. It is the day of the annual science fair. So we have, I have to ask, we'll have to get Lauren Figge over here at some point. I'm sure the schools will when they come on at 8 o'clock. But just to find out exactly how many science projects we have.
I'm sure we can bellow during a break. And
I know during a break I can sprint on over to the other side and see the numbers. But
I'll just yell.
What? Yeah. But anyway, there are a lot because just this first row has 26 of them, and there are 1, 2,
easily,
4, 5. I don't know. There are like 7.
I think there's over 200. I think is what they said.
So anyway, lots of science projects. So the students will be arriving, I guess, in about an hour or so. This is a judged. It's like a juried science fair, so there will be judges here, and there are score sheets. Yeah.
There's.
Oh yeah.
There's rubrics they call them.
Yes, there are
academics.
Rubrics. Oh yeah, it is. It's quite the ordeal here. But anyway, that's where we're broadcasting. So from 8 to 10, we'll have lots of members of the school folks here to do their show. But we are doing our show between 6 and 8, and my guest this first hour is our resident primary care physician, Dr. Akinyele Lovelace, who has been absent for a few months, so we're happy to have him back. And before we start, let's just talk about the fact that February is National Self Self-Check Month. So let's talk a little bit about that. And that's actually going to be our topic this morning. And it's really all about being proactive when it comes to your health. So National Self-Check Month is a reminder that every day of the year we can take charge of our health and increase our odds of avoiding chronic disease and other often preventable conditions. We all have our reasons for avoiding a checkup or a self-check. We're too busy or we don't want to know the truth. National Self-Check Month brings to your fingertips a variety of self-empowering and proactive early detection and preventative resources and tools to guide us through healthcare-related fears and concerns. It's time to do your important self-checks and or visit your healthcare professional for a wellness check. The history of this self-check month is Self-Check, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, founded National Self-Check Month to spread their simple mission, which is to provide the best and most comprehensive one-to-one tools and resources free of charge to help protect you and those you care about from cancer, heart disease, and other chronic diseases that are often preventable and treatable if they're found early enough. Most people are reactive when it comes to their health. They seek out information when they're already sick or when a friend has been diagnosed. Self-Check does the opposite. It nudges the public about the importance of proactive prevention, early detection, and wellness care of chronic diseases so that they can reduce their odds of getting sick in the first place. So, this whole show is this is what we're all about. I mean, we are a health and wellness radio show. We've been preaching this stuff for 5 years, which is, to take charge of your own health. There are lots of, I'm amazed at, some of the just simple diagnostic procedures, things like colonoscopies and mammographies and things like that. And sometimes I am blown away by people that I talk to who are in their 40s and 50s and even 60s who say, oh yeah, no, I've never had that done. And I just think, you're kidding. Like, why would you not, take some of those precautions? So I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Lovelace. So let's talk about that. What do you find in your practice in terms of people being proactive versus people being reactive?
I think that's a really important concept that you just brought up. The why, and I have that discussion with a lot of people, and a lot of it has to do with how you value yourself and putting your health first. And a lot of times people have real relevant excuses, and that's what I call them. I'm going to say, well, I feel like that was an excuse, so I'm going to let you say that, but I'm not going to accept that, right? Okay. I want us to really talk about your health. But in all fairness, a lot of times, especially for those adults in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, a lot of times they're working long hours. Mm-hmm. They are caring for an aging family member. Maybe they have children that they're taking care of. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of other underlying issues a lot of times where it's a time issue for certain people. Okay. Or they tell me,
absolutely,
Dr. Lovelace, I just don't have the time. I don't have the time for bad news. I don't have the time to eat differently. I don't have the time to go to the gym. I don't have time for those things. And I understand that. Mm-hmm. And so I think you bringing this topic up today is pivotal. I think us looking into selfcheck.org is a great resource, because what I then try to do is I try to encourage self-empowerment. Mm-hmm. And I think that is important when dealing with our health and saying I have control over my health, because a lot of times it can almost seem very overwhelming. Yeah. And so when it becomes overwhelming, a lot of people just decide to just curl up in a ball. Yeah, they back down. They're just like, this is too much. This is making me very anxious about the future. I really don't want to deal with this right now. And I understand that. And so what I try to do a lot of times is say, all right, listen, how about today we do one thing that's really healthy for our body? Yeah. Just one thing. If you can give me one thing, I think that's a great start. And so you start to develop the habit of, well, all right, did I do something good for my body today? Mm-hmm. Did I eat something nutritious today? Mm-hmm. Or did I do something for my mental health today? And you go through that process, and then slowly but surely it becomes a routine in your life. Mm-hmm. In regards to a lot of the checkup things, the other issues that I find, which once again, this is a great resource, it also has to do with medical literacy and understanding what to ask.
Okay.
Because a lot of times, a lot of adults in their 40s, 50s, and 60s aren't sure. They're not sure what they actually need or what they want or what they're getting.
Okay.
And they'll go, well, I mean, I go see the doctor. They look at me. They might do an EKG. They do blood work and say I'm fine. And that's it. So why do I have to go every year? Mm-hmm. And my honest answer to them is sometimes some of you don't. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily have to go every year, but you do need to be health conscious and health aware about your body. Mm-hmm. And so certain key concepts about, which is really illustrated really well, even on the questionnaire that they have at that website, understanding the relevance of your BMI or your body mass index, understanding your weight, understanding your blood pressure, and being screened for blood sugar and cholesterol issues are extremely important. And those things should be done pretty routinely. The conversation a lot of times that I have with a lot of people is, well, BMI. I mean, BMI, that doesn't work for me. Or BMI is, I was an athlete, or I'm, and I was like, right? You said was,
yeah.
My BMI doesn't count. And so what I say to people is I say, yes, how we started to develop the BMI, yes, it could have been a little bit biased at the time when it first kind of came about because it was using one population of a certain group of men, and that's sort of how we started to derive it. But over time, we've started to see that there is definitely a relationship between BMI and health issues. Mm-hmm. I'm not perfect either, and so I do make a comment and say, hey, listen, my BMI isn't the best. I still have to work on my BMI, so this is something that I have to challenge and continue to work on. But it's relevant, and understanding what that means for your health is extremely important in relationship to heart disease, in relationship to your risk for diabetes, and understanding those things. And I think having that kind of conversation about your health on an ongoing basis with somebody is extremely important. And so taking these variables into play is a big deal, but it is a lot.
Well, I think that, you brought one of the points that you brought up, or one of the messages that I'm getting out of this is a lot of people have that all or nothing thinking. It's like, well, this is overwhelming, trying to manage all of this stuff and check all this stuff. It's just overwhelming. So I'm not going to do anything. Right. As opposed to, okay, looking at maybe some of the diagnostic procedures that are, that would be important for females, for instance, getting their mammogram. And to me, it's sort of like, okay, how much time is that going to be? That's not really a big time factor. You don't have to now, for instance, like a colonoscopy. I mean, there's preparation work that has to be done, so that's time. Right. You can't drive yourself to the procedure, so that's more involved, and I get that. A mammogram, it's like, okay, you make the appointment, you drive yourself there. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes, and you're done.
But the issue, it's interesting too. We had this conversation yesterday.
Did you?
What are the phases? Like, I gained a lot of weight in a short period of time.
Yes.
Okay, that's alarming.
Okay.
So what are the phases we do that it's not I'm taking a zillion tests in a week?
Yeah.
What are the phases we do to say, okay, let's rule things out as we go?
And let's go along. Yeah. Let's have the conversation. And then the other part is that healthcare itself and how it's delivered, there are some inefficiencies. Yep. There are some areas in which it creates its own angst. So let's take the example of the mammogram.
Okay.
And so you have someone that has a mammogram, and maybe there is an abnormality.
Okay.
And you get the letter in the mail.
Sure.
Oh, that's miserable. Now you've got to come back.
Yes.
And you have to get more images done. That creates a lot of angst, right? Because you're having someone, maybe they're not, in the medical field per se, and so you telling someone you've got to come back for more testing that's not a good thing.
Yeah, that's scary.
That's a very scary predicament to be in, and who wants that? Like I have, you might be a mother, a daughter, a wife, and you now have to deal with the notion that you might have an abnormal test for the next, 2 to 4 weeks. That's very stressful. Yeah. And so even if you're getting told that it was a normal test in the end, you don't want to have that feeling again. So I can understand how some of what we do in medicine, it's not always conducive to giving you peace of mind either. And so
Understood.
I think going forward in what I try to champion, or we're trying to get these healthcare facilities and how we go about doing these things, is really trying to use examples where it's a little bit more patient-centric.
Yeah, sort of user-friendly.
It needs to be.
Yeah.
Like it needs to be, and we need to demand that from our healthcare providers and deliverers, and it is a hard concept for some of us to kind of take in, but at the same time we're seeing it in a lot of other areas of industry. We're seeing it in when we travel, we see it on our phones, we see it, like, it's coming. And so what we're seeing in medicine is we're going to start to see that develop, where it will become a little bit more user friendly. And I think when that happens, it won't feel so awkward. You won't have that time frame, because I understand that. And so that's why I could see how maybe you got your mammogram when you were 45, but you haven't had one since you were, haven't had one in 5 years. And so you say why, and then you hear the stories, and you can relate.
Yeah.
And so what I would do is I would just continue everyone to just encourage and continue to kind of just, well, I understand you don't want to get it this year, but I hope you're doing your self checks. Like, I hope you're actually still looking at your breast. I hope you're checking for spots, right? Like, there are still things that you can do.
Right.
And so I think there's some value in just being aware. And there's a couple of things when you break it down that we have to be mindful of. And cancer risk is one of them. And I think in this, in the self-check kind of movement that's here, which is great, they talk about the cancers that we all need to be aware of, right? And so it's usually in women, it's breast, it's ovarian, it's colon, right? And then let's not forget about lung. And there's certain things and questions that we need to be asking about. For men, prostate, colon, and lung. And so, and a lot of it, you're right, have to do with our habits, right? A lot of our habits are going to dictate the things that we absolutely need to be concerned about, right? So, for example, what do I need to be concerned about lung cancer? Well, are you a smoker? Yeah, I kind of smoked for about 25 years of my life. Well, guess what? There's a screening test for that now. And you can, if you want to know what your risks are,
Really?
talk about it.
I didn't realize there was a screening test for probabilities.
Well, it's the low dose cancer test. It's the low dose CT scan, right? So we're doing CT scans now to really evaluate populations of people who fit the criteria when it comes to their smoke history. And then now we're able to look at these spots in the lungs and say, okay, well, you probably need to have a repeat CAT scan in 6 months or 12 months, or you really need to come in again because this doesn't look good. And we've captured some early lung cancers, even in my office. And I think that's a great thing. The issue, though, is still convincing the patient that they need this test and that this test is of value. And so the issue a lot of times with a screening test are that there is that angst, right? We're not getting that instant, hey, I know the answer immediately, right? I still have to wait. And people don't want that. Like, they want it to be a little bit faster. So I could understand that. Other issues outside of cancer is heart disease, and so discussing your risk and concern for heart disease is extremely important.
And that's kind of a twofold thing. I mean, that has to do with, lifestyle and that. It also has to do with family history.
Very much
which
so.
is, and the same for, breast cancer and colon cancer. I mean, family history is really important.
It's extremely important. So to have that conversation with your family and to understand your family risk. And to colon cancer, now we're seeing those commercials with that little, it's like that guy in the box, right? He's waving hi to you. And I think that's a great thing to start asking about, because colon cancer screenings, you don't necessarily need a colonoscopy every year. It's definitely dependent upon what your tests were showing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now we have tests where we're actually looking for the DNA, right? And so that's what that little box guy is doing. And so that then gives us another resource.
It's another tool, right? It's another tool.
And I think that's a good conversation to have. And so, hey, what does your stool look like? Is your stool bloody, right? Like, taking the time to look at your bodily functions is extremely important. And being self-aware about your health is something we need to be, talking about.
Yeah, and I think the other...
That's a lot of ooh for people, though.
It is. It is. But you know what? I think the other thing, too, is that...
It depends on how you feel, too.
But we all do it.
And a lot of people, too, will say, by the time they finally get to the doctor, they're very aware of, yes, I've seen blood in my stool for the last 8 months. I mean, I hear that stuff all the time, and I'll say, wow, when did this start? Thinking they're going to say last week or yesterday. And it was like, well, after my trip last summer, and you're thinking, oh my goodness.
You probably had an ulcer or something.
Probably, but then, and then to their credit,
it's hard.
It's hard. It takes a lot to admit that you're not okay, or that you're not doing well, or that you might want to ignore it for a little bit, assuming it might go away. I think these are all reasonable things to do. And then once again, healthcare itself and how it's delivered, sometimes even if you want to get to see the doctor at a certain time, sometimes you have to wait.
Absolutely.
So it's hard, and then you have to wait, and then you get frustrated, and you're like, well, the heck with it. I don't want to do it, because if they can't get me in when I want to get in, then it must not be that much of an issue. And so that's why, once again, I think becoming medically literate and understanding, having this website, which is great. It actually says what questions should you ask your doctor yearly.
It's the self-check CHEC
which is
website.
Great.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of information.
The take-home test to check for your stool. Do I need to get my cholesterol checked? Should I be screened for sexually transmitted diseases? I mean, those are relevant questions that you should ask. It also asks about bone densometry. What is bone densometry? Well, we want to check to see if you are at risk for osteoporosis, right? Like, these are huge things. And why do I want to know about osteoporosis, including men? Well, your risk for hip fractures. And if you break a hip, if you've known someone out there that's broken a hip, it can be a life-ending event if you're not careful.
And it's interesting. Gary was just telling me about some friends of ours who were on a trip. Now I can't remember who they were. It was a couple. She fell and broke a leg, but they think that it was a pathological fracture. She heard the break first and then went down. She tripped and then broke something.
Correct.
And that really does have to do with bone density.
Correct.
We're saying.
And so pathological fracture means when you actually, all of a sudden, the bone just breaks out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And you have no reason.
Yep.
Or
that's really scary, though, in and of itself.
Absolutely.
It's extremely scary. And so,
but there are things that we can do about bone density, too, if we know in advance that that's a problem.
Correct. Right. So the type of calcium and vitamin D intake that you're getting, hopefully from foods.
Yep. And also exercise.
Hopefully some type of exercise.
Yep.
Those are, but those are conversations that you'd want to have, and they're very specific to the person. And so a lot of things that people sometimes think about when they go to the doctor, it's not for everyone. Like, everything that you might read or see is not necessarily for you. And I think trying to kind of break through through the minutia, right?
Yes,
so for example, there's a great thing here. Other things to ask. Aspirin use to prevent cardiovascular disease.
Okay.
I've had people come in and say, well, I've been on an aspirin for 12 years. And I said, well, why? Well, I saw it on the news and they told me it would be something ideal. And I'll say, well, hold on now. What is the reason why you're taking the aspirin? And so these are the conversations. If you're taking it for cardiovascular risk, well then, okay, what are your risks? And let's discuss those. And what are some other things we could do? Same thing kind of applies to certain supplements. Let's take omega-3 fatty acids, for example. Why are you taking the omega-3s? Well, I'm taking the omega-3s because I saw on television that it was good for me. Well, how much are you taking?
Yeah.
And how much of it is of some value? Oh, but did you notice that you're bleeding and bruising more? Well, yeah, I was taking my omega-3s and my aspirin, and I thought maybe it was the aspirin. No, you didn't realize that the omega-3s can make you bleed as well. Right? So it's these kind of conversations which I think are extremely important when we talk about preventative care. And I have to tell you, preventative care actually works. When we look at, we always compare, when I go to a lot of these meetings and we talk about the nations that are doing better than us, or that where the quality of life of the people is just better, or they're not spending so much per capita per person on healthcare.
Okay.
What are they doing differently?
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with a lot of social deterrence and a lot of preventative care needs, and it's where we're placing our resources. So, for example, certain other countries in which they have a lower incidence of heart disease, guess what they have more of? They have more bicycle lanes. They make it more pedestrian friendly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there's no way in the world I could have rode my bike from East Mountain Road to the Westfield High School, right? Like, there's and it's been a safe way for me to get here. And so, because we're such a car-centric nation for a lot of different reasons, it kind of gets in the way for allowing pedestrians to kind of do those kind of things. There's no coincidence that men that live in New York City typically are healthier compared to the rest of the nation. And why is that? Well, they walk everywhere because you can't have a car. And so those type of things are extremely important when we talk about the incidence of maternal death, or when we talk about why sometimes our birth rate issues are the way they are compared to certain other countries. It's the resources that we put into prenatal care and the resources that we then allocate. We care more about the back part after they're born sometimes and before they're born. But that matters, and that matters on those outcomes. And so if you were to go to Canada, every mother who is pregnant automatically has health care, right? Like, and so it's also kind of a conversation as to how we value preventative care. And the real issue with preventative care is that it's not a, I hate to say it, but it's not a big money grabber.
Right. And it's hard to measure the outcome because you're preventing something.
Correct.
So, if somebody goes into the hospital and they're sick and they come out and they're well, it's a measured outcome. They went in one way, they came out another way. They came in weighing this much, they came out weighing that much, or, whatever it is. But preventative medicine, it's like, how do you measure, well, gee, if I hadn't gone to the doctor and found out that I'm, pre-diabetic, and then took charge and did something about it. Well, that doesn't necessarily come out as a stat.
No,
that hey, you've managed that and you're good now.
Yeah. So that's the other issue. The onus and where people are wanting to put their resources. Right.
Yeah.
We put a lot of resources in fighting cancer. We put a lot of resources in preventing heart disease. And what I'll say is those are also, they make a lot of money also, right?
Yes.
Like they make a lot of money for these institutions.
Sure.
And so it's really hard to gather up all of these institutions and say, hey guys, let's not use all of our resources for these things. Let's just work on preventative measures so that they never come to our institutions so we can't charge them.
Yeah.
And that's a really...
it's a little dicey.
But we know it's important.
Yes.
We know it's important because we are facing a healthcare shortage in personnel. Right?
Boy, are we ever.
And so what needs to happen is we have to start changing our conversation. And so that's why I think when you brought this up, I was like, oh, we have to talk about this because this is a growing issue that's not going to go away. And I think the more proactive we are about our health and being able to kind of see it in advance, it's going to reduce the cost for everyone. Across the board. So this is a pivotal conversation to have.
Yeah, and I think it's just, trying to keep people out of doctors' offices and out of the emergency room and out of urgent care as much as possible.
Correct. And it's not because I don't want to see everybody. I love seeing everybody.
No, you have plenty of people to see.
But
seriously, it is during this sort of flu season, what we've seen is we just have people who can't get in to see a doctor for like 2 or 3 weeks. It's just like, well, that's the first available appointment. And sometimes it's like, that's the first available appointment to see the physician assistant. It's not even, your PCP because, as you said, there's just such a shortage.
And so we are trying to expand hours and providers, but the issue in healthcare is that the resources allocated to care for the population is getting smaller and smaller, even though the population that you have to treat is getting larger and larger. And so we're going to reach a critical mass at some point. Right?
And we also know that, that aging population is, all those baby boomers are now, over the age of 60. And so, that's just a huge. And
so for us to continue, but a lot of them are very healthy. A lot of them are very proactive. A lot of them are still in the workforce. A lot of them are. So it's not like they're not just sitting around.
Correct.
A lot of them are still contributing, and so my encouragement to them is to say, hey, let's keep it going. Like, let's stay active, let's stay proactive, let's still have that conversation about our heart. Let's talk about colon cancer, let's talk about breast disease, let's talk about prostate health. Like, let's talk about and then make it a very personalized conversation about what we need to be focused on. It's not just a big blanket of, well, I need to have this at 50 and I need to have this at 60. Yes, there are some guidelines, but there are certain things that are very specific to you. And if we can just address those things, I guarantee that our quality of life going forward is extremely important, because I have the luxury of at any given point in my day of meeting someone who was born in 1926, and then someone that was born in 1996. And they could walk past each other in the hallway, and they wouldn't even know it because you're not walking past in the age. But I have that luxury, and I have that luxury of understanding how that person that was born in 1926, how they got to that point, and what were the habits that they had, and what the things that they do. And you'll hear there's a common theme. Well, I didn't smoke. I didn't drink that much. I watch what I eat, and I was with the same partner in life. We went on vacations. We stayed active in the community. Like, there are some key things that you just hear, and a lot of it has to do with just how you feel about yourself, how you feel about your family, and how you feel about your community. And I think that plays a huge role. And then understanding that your health also comes, like, it has a big place in all of these things.
And it's very multifaceted.
Very much so.
It is 7:03. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield Masses. My guest this first hour has been our resident primary care physician, Dr. Akinyele Lovelace. I know we need to take a break. I'm surprised Pete let me blow through the 6:45, and
we're remote.
Boy, did we ever!
Yeah.
We're remote. We just went the whole half an hour.
That was great. That was good. So Pete, we can do the top of the.
Provided by Westfield Bank. For more than 160 years, Westfield Bank has been an important community presence and commercial leader in the Pioneer Valley, with convenient full banking services in Westfield, West Springfield, East Longmeadow, Agawam, Feeding Hills, Springfield, Southwick, as well as Enfield and Granby, Connecticut. Visit us on the web at westfieldbank.org.
Hi, it's Bob Plass, and I have Wow, It's Tuesday, every Tuesday, 6 to 8. Wow, it's Tuesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
I did it!
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 7:07. You're listening to WSKB 89.5
Bob Plass
FM.
is just the best.
Radio for the Westfield Masses. It really is. We all chuckle every time we hear that little his own little promo over there. So my guest this first hour has been Dr. Akinyele Lovelace, our resident primary care physician with where are you anyway?
Family Medicine Associates.
Family Medicine
Westfield,
Associates. Well, I know where. It's the pink building. It's the one that looks like it's right out of Miami Vice. Get the car, Tubbs. That's Akinyele's line.
Oh,
love it.
boy.
You know, I was flipping around in 200s of my cable channel a couple of weeks ago, and sure enough, Miami Vice. I pulled up Miami Vice, and I was like, "There's Don Johnson with remember the no sock look? That was impressive.
Oh.
But he'd wear the white suits with the cream color suits with no socks.
Oh, I love
the old days of Miami Vice.
I feel like we need to touch up our building a bit to kind of spruce it up a little bit. Maybe put some neon. I was thinking maybe some neon
accent
across the type.
You need some flamingos or something out there.
Oh yes,
right. Come on.
That's a great idea.
Oh, boy.
Oh, that's
happening. There it is. It's happening. All right, so we are talking. This is like our extended edition of Dr. Akinyele Lovelace with us this morning.
Yeah, might as well, because he's got to wait till...
No, this is great. And he's here until Joe Rouse comes in and kicks him out of the chair.
And I did go to science camp, so I'm digging the science fair.
Oh,
isn't it really cool?
It's really fun. Right. So, we'll do another 5 minutes, and then I'll let you roam around before...
Last year we had Zach Medeiros and his partner talking about they were trying to create a better nose cone for wind turbines to reduce the drag.
That's a great idea.
And then increase the spin. And they had spent, this was their second or third year doing the same project and continually improving the design.
That's really impressive.
Isn't that cool?
That is very impressive.
I mean, Zach's at the Naval Academy right now. So
there you go. There it is.
Yeah, he has a clue.
That research will continue.
He
has a clue.
So the topic this morning is February's National Self-Check Month. And we've been talking about being proactive with your health. And the one thing that just to kind of pull this all together, Dr. Lovelace, and sort of wrap it in a nice package is one of the things, there we are.
Yeah, that's first bell.
You know that we're in a school
do I need to go to home?
A school gym. No, you don't have to go to home. Stay here. But one of the things that that's really, I think, tied into this that we just need to kind of focus on for just a minute is the psychology of all of this, because so much of what you've talked about this morning, it's not just the physicality of I'm getting an insulin check or I'm getting whatever. It's the whole psychology of, do I want to be aware? How much control do I want to have, or do I feel like I have the time to have? So there's this whole psychological piece, and I think as a healthcare provider, I'm guessing that may be one of your more challenging.
It's huge.
Areas,
it's huge because
right?
you're trying to establish trust, right? It's a relationship, and so having a relationship with the provider that you can count on or that you feel comfortable with, I think, is the other issue. Because what you don't want to share your intimate thoughts and feelings about something and it be discounted.
Yes.
Right? Or someone is not really listening or paying attention to you.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times
Right.
for a lot of people, they do run into that in healthcare. And so, because it can be a very cold and sterile environment. And so that's a hard thing to want to do. And so the psychology is the biggest part of it, as far as I'm concerned, really working through the concept that, you know what, despite what news I might tell you, we're going to be okay. Like, you're fine. Like, we are still living. And so having that kind of motivation and having that talk of positivity, I think, is the most important part, despite whatever the news or outcome may be. But if we're doing preventative evaluations, it should all still just be good news. It should all just still be, hey, we're just working towards maintaining, or not, if not improving. And I think that's where the value of the conversation is with preventative health. There is no bad news as far as I'm concerned going forward.
You know what I think the other thing is, and again, this is a challenge for the healthcare professional, is knowing your patients enough to know kind of how people are going to react to things. For instance, I have a brother who's a PhD chemist, all right? He is data driven. Now, this is a brother who had a brain tumor at one point. Other people would really freak out about that. You know, Mike was just all data driven. Okay, I have this. What are my options? What am I going to do? How are we going to treat it? I'm so glad that we caught it as early as we did. I mean, and I kept waiting for the crisis of, oh my God, how is this going to impact my life? And other people, and it's interesting because I had this conversation with him a couple of weeks ago when I went to visit him with another family member who's going through some health issues, and we don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And, I'm trying to point out to my brother how scary that is. And he's, his whole thing is just like, well, you're going to do this test, this test, this test. So you're going to rule things out and figure it out. And that's all going to be a good thing. And you should this person should be feeling great about that. I'm like, okay, but that's you.
Yep.
Because that's the way your brain works, but that's not the way this person's brain works. And so I think as a healthcare provider, that's really got to be challenging.
And that's where the relationship comes from. And that's where
that's the trust
and that's
that
the
you
trust.
talked about.
That is the trust that we have. And I am very aware of it. And sometimes you can get caught off guard. Like sometimes you're doing your preventative check. And I mean, I've had a scenario where I've had a patient, I tell them they're diabetic, and you would have thought the world ended.
Yes.
Like the world just came to a screeching halt. They're crying. They need me to check again. I'm holding their hand. I'm spending an extra 40 minutes explaining diabetes. And so it's tough. And then I tell them, hey, listen, let's come back. Let's go over this again. You're going to be okay. You can fight this, or you can improve. And so sometimes you don't know until you kind of get them in that moment. And that's where a lot of issues, because you never know how people interpret certain diagnoses and their approach to things. And so I always try to make it a plan. Okay, so here's our plan. This is what we're going to do, right? And so what I would encourage all of any patient that's going to see a provider is to then just make sure they're okay with the plan, or that they understand some of the basics. Because a lot of times with a lot of diagnoses or a lot of things in the medical field, you're not quite sure about what you were just told.
Right.
You're not quite sure.
Yep. And you know what? I want to follow that up with just to kind of wrap this up with two things. One is we have a nurse at the senior center,
awesome.
And a lot of her job, she's actually a Bay State Noble Hospital employee who does not work at the hospital. She's part-time, semi-retired, only works at the senior center. She's there Tuesdays and Fridays in the morning from 9 to 12. But a lot of what Mary Ellen does is patient education, so that when you give that diagnosis of diabetes or whatever, and it's hard sometimes to have that half hour, that's where we come in. And she does a lot of that patient education of, okay, this is what that means. This is what your doctor said to you. This is where you're going to start. So I want to offer that as a resource. And the other thing is, since we brought up diabetes, we are starting a diabetes support group at the senior center. I'm actually going to give you this flyer.
That's awesome.
Take back with you.
Yes.
We're calling it our Sweet Relief Diabetes Diabetic Support Group. This group was actually the woman who's going to facilitate this. Jennifer Jaffuna is a nutrition, a registered dietitian and nutritionist who ran the group at Noble Hospital years ago when it was just Noble Hospital before Bay State merged. And so she's going to be doing that, facilitating it once a month. It's going to be the third Wednesday Wednesday of the month from 1 to 2:30. So the first meeting is next Wednesday on February 19th. But I'm going to give this to you to post in your office and to kind of spread that word.
Yeah, I'm going to make multiple copies.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I post this on my website too?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. She is wonderful. Jen just opened up her own practice in right on Elm Street in Westfield. But she's fabulous. I've been working with her for a long time.
Awesome.
So we're going to wrap this up. I have Joe Rouse waiting in the wings.
He's in the bullpen.
He's in the bullpen, and we have his theme song. Dr. Lovelace, thank you so much. We will see you next month.
Yes.
Skies ain't gonna cloud no more. The crops ain't gonna fail. Caught a bluebird by the toe, a rainbow by the tail. A certain man with eyes that shine voodooed up this heart of mine. It seems like happiness is just a thing called joy. He's got a smile that makes the lilacs want to grow. He's got a way that makes the angels heave a sigh. When they see little Joe passing by, sometimes the cabin's gloomy and the table's bare. But when he kisses me, it's Christmas everywhere. Troubles fly away and life is easy. Does he love me good? That's all I need to know. Seems like happiness is just a thing called Joe. Little Joe, little Joe, little Joe.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Comcast and Xfinity.com, offering Xfinity TV, Internet, home phone, and home security services. Information on all that Xfinity has to offer in the Westfield area is available online at Xfinity.com.
This is Ken Stomsky from Ken's Den on WCPC 15 and 89.5 FM, Tuesdays, 8 to 10.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 7:20. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses. My name is Tina Gorman. I'm your Wake Up Wednesday host. We are broadcasting live this morning from Westfield High School. We are here in the gymnasium. They're doing their annual science fair, and the students are just coming in, and I see the lovely Christina Lovelace has just walked in with her lovely two daughters. My guest this second hour is Joe Rouse from the director of the health department for the city of Westfield. Are you going to be able to stay for 2 minutes, or do you have to?
I'm definitely staying.
Oh, he's staying.
Joe
and Dr. Akinyele Lovelace, I have a twofer going on here.
Topic.
Hi, Christina. Hi, my girlfriends. How are you? So the topic for right now is coronavirus. That is it's in the news, Joe. It's in the news. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
What's the deal?
So, just a little background for people who don't know. It was, and I think everybody should by now. Started in a province in China, Wuhan, China.
Yes.
It's an interesting one. It's a coronavirus that's often seen in animals. It's common in animals.
Okay.
Camels and cows and stuff like that. Rarely it gets transmitted to humans. So this one was interesting because it came from kind of the same way we got SARS and MERS before. It was a similar type virus. But this one was transmitted to humans from some sort of a open markets, like had everything, live animals, food, seafood, everything mixed together. Transmitted obviously to a human, which then that started the whole ball rolling. So there isn't any vaccine for it yet, although of course they're working on it. There is testing for it. Whoa.
It's first period.
Yeah, first period.
It's time to go.
I gotta
Everybody get to where you're going.
I gotta go. I got math.
Exactly. Akinyele's got band practice.
I've got
So anyway, I'll talk through this. I don't care.
Yeah. Okay.
So just as that's where it all began, and now it's gotten over to this country. If people haven't heard,
are we still at 12 cases?
13 now.
13.
Yep,
Okay.
as of yesterday. So
okay.
So just so people know at the local level, it's like, this is way bigger than us, but at the same time, we have to be prepared in case we need to do any sort of mass immunization. If they do come out with a vaccine, I'm sure people are going to be knocking down the doors to get it.
Yeah.
Even though they should be right now a little more focused on still getting their flu shot. So
that's a bigger problem in the United States.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yes.
Yeah, and it's real. So
it's hard. It's hitting hard this year.
It is. It's about 0.1% from being an epidemic.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a 7.1 was where we're at now, percentage-wise. 7.2 constitutes an epidemic.
Okay.
And it's widespread all over the country.
Yeah.
So
this one's hitting everybody hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even if you got your flu shot, you're still getting hit with it, but not quite as bad.
Yeah, predominant strain this year is the influenza B, is what the over 50% of them are showing up as. So, but anyway, with the coronavirus, just to say that we've been sitting in on a lot of webinars with the CDC and also the Department of Public Health. They give 3 Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. They give updates on this, and they'll caution everyone who's listening to say we still don't know a lot about this right now. Okay. So, they are open for questions after they get done with their presentation. But it really, right now, they're really cautioning everybody, even providers, to say, err on the side of caution with this. If you have people that show up, present with symptoms, and they've had exposure to that China connection.
Mm-hmm.
So,
is that why they're calling it a novel virus? Is that why there's a prefix of the novel coronavirus?
Because of what?
Because it was mutated in a new way, and because it's kind of they don't know a lot about the characteristics of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we what are the symptoms? I have not heard that anywhere. It's like, so how would I even know to think that this could be something that's scary?
I mean, the big 3 they're looking for is fever, cough, shortness of breath.
Okay.
And then again, that
relationship.
The relationship.
And location.
Yeah,
and we're
yeah,
talking
of course.
extremely high fevers.
Okay.
I think what I'd want to say about this entire scenario is the following, though. Number one, the Bay State area itself. So Bay State itself is probably one of the resources that we have that's actually equipped to manage any type of mass epidemic. Like, they're the only institution that can actually handle Ebola.
Okay.
And so I think it's very reassuring that our region has the ability to handle any type of mass outbreak. That's the first thing. The second thing is for those that have been exposed to coronavirus, for every, I believe that there was some statistic that says for every 1 or 2 people that actually have it, the other 10 people or 8 people that have been around them, they develop an immunity.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've been starting to hear is that the velocity in which it's spreading is going to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so we're going to be okay for the most part, as long as we're doing all the right things when it comes to preventative and being proactive.
And being proactive with your help.
That?
Hey,
and so,
and we have come full circle.
And we've come full circle.
Yeah.
And so what the conversation now is, as long as it's contained and as long as we are asking the right questions, we should be okay when it comes to controlling this type of outbreak. But once again, this is another example of how we just need to be aware of how flu viruses and viruses in general can spread very fastly, right? And so the assumption is a lot of this is being spread by very close contact. Usually it's through droplets. So someone's coughing, someone's sneezing, and all of a sudden it gets into your face, it gets into your mouth. We're not quite sure whether it's related to any other blood products or any other type of contamination issues, but we are very sure that if you cough or sneeze, that's why you're seeing people wear masks when they go to the hospital. That's why it's extremely important to take those self-precautions. We do know that if you're using the just hand washing is always important, and also using any hand sanitizer will be of some value. We're not quite sure when it comes to contact on inanimate places like tables and things of that nature. We're not sure about that yet, but I think there's still some good news that's going to come out of this, I believe, going forward. It's just that we just have to make sure. I ask everybody now, if you have a fever and chills, hey, have you been to China? The majority of other things I've seen is also respiratory syncytial virus. So those are the common ones. And I have seen some influenza A, just in whether I've been in Holyoke or Springfield. Those are the other 2 ones that I'm seeing more commonly just as much. So it's the run-of-the-mill stuff that we normally would see this time of year. It's very severe.
It's also very interesting. The colleges that I'm working at, Smith and Mount Holyoke, have a large international population.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And they've been very, very, very proactive about getting the word out quickly and saying, here are the conditions. If you meet this, stay where you are, notify campus police, but also tell them if you're having the fever and presenting signs, and we'll deal with it from there. So they were very proactive right off the bat, and it was coming from the office of the president. They weren't messing around with health centers, things like that. That was coming from the boss down.
Yeah. So is the shortness of breath, is that one of the ones that is that unique? I mean, do you typically find that with the flu, or does that seem to be one of the factors that's a little bit more unique to corona? I don't know.
I see
respiratory, you mean?
I see it with the flu. Like,
do you see it with the flu? Well, the shortness of breath.
So we do an entire respiratory panel a lot of times just to kind of see what's going on. And so my answer is yes, right?
Okay.
Like the shortness of breath, the fevers. So if I have someone that comes into my office, I'm immediately, unfortunately, I'm swabbing their nose. Or I'm sticking the swab in their face. And, I've had a lot of people tell me, like, yeah, my wife told me you'd do this. And I'm like, yeah, this is coming. Like, this is going to happen. And so it is part of kind of the prodrome that we see for viral respiratory illnesses, and so that's what we do.
Let's get into some of what can people do, and just even flu in general, but any of these, sort of things that can spread quickly, epidemic. Like we talked about washing hands, which I'm a nutcase about that. I have signs all over the senior center. We have hand sanitizer on all of the tables in the great room. But what else? What else can people do?
Well,
what else should they
one
be
of
doing?
one of the things that people have to consider, and this was kind of mandatory when we first heard about the coronavirus. Stay home.
Yeah,
please.
hello.
Stay home.
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
And this one is strange because you can have the virus and not present any symptoms for up to 14 days, right? So this is why when people were first coming over here with their exposure to China, it was in some cases, mandatory quarantine for 14 days.
Yep.
Okay.
And there were some where even if they had the symptoms, they were still asking for a voluntary quarantine for 14 days.
Okay.
So So I think that with that, like the exposure part of it, if it were me and I was exposed, I was over in China and I was allowed to come back here without being stuck on a ship in the ocean, then I would definitely stay home. You know, I'm fortunate enough that I have the time to do that, but that's a big thing. You know, don't go out and
it is a big
especially
thing.
when you're symptomatic, and don't go out and start coughing and sneezing on everyone, please.
Right. And you know what? I deal with that with staff, and you know, it's like, oh, I have to get to work. It's like, no, you don't, because it'll spread through this place like wildfire. And I you know, my staff knows if it's anything stomach related, do not come anywhere. I don't even want you in the parking lot.
Right.
Stay home. Get better, deal with it, come back in, you know, 2 or 3 days, take as much time as you need. But yeah, I think that's really key. And I it's so funny because I find myself too, even like at the grocery store, you know, people are coughing all over and I'm thinking, no, like that's all my produce over there.
Right?
So yeah, stay home. All right.
Please. Yeah.
All right. It is 7:31. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses. We're going to take a short break. This one is, what's our song? The History of Everything? Is that the one we're playing? So this is by Bare Naked Ladies, and it is so appropriate. It's for the birthday of Jim Cregan, but we are at the science fair. So this is the Big Bang song theme.
Support for community radio on WSKB provided by Westfield Electroplating. Employing over 140 skilled platers, painters, and technicians, Westfield Electroplating was founded in 1946 and was the first company in the country to achieve National Aerospace and Defense Contractor Program accreditation, proudly maintaining that status for over a decade. Westfield Electroplating provides over 50 quality finishes to meet your corrosion, cosmetic, or performance needs. On the web at www.westfieldplating.com or 413-568-3716. Westfield Electroplating, putting the finishing touches on technology.
Listen to me, Michael Buster McMahon, Mondays 8 to 10 a.m. to learn the stories behind your favorite songs. Or don't. I'm not the boss of you.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 7:34. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM, radio for the Westfield masses. My name is Tina Gorman. I'm your Wake Up Wednesday host, and we are broadcasting live from Westfield High School this morning. We are here at their annual science fair, so I thought
there's beginning to be a little bustle.
Yeah, it is getting a little. It is. The judges are starting to arrive. The students are starting to arrive. So it's kind of fun. And we just heard the song, The History of Everything. So we've really gotten in that science mode. My guest this morning is Joe Rouse, Director of Public Health for the City of Westfield. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
Turn my chair here.
I love being here. It's just such a blast from the past.
I know, it's so funny. Well, when that first bell rang before Akadeli's like, oh, am I supposed to go to homeroom? You really does take you right back to, to those high school years. So we're talking this morning about the coronavirus because you can't turn on the news these days and not hear about it. But it kind of
do you think that the news organizations are making too much of a big deal about it? They're overhyping it.
Well,
I don't know.
It's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. What do you think, Joe?
Are they scaring people too much?
Well, they always do.
Okay.
Right? Okay. And I will say, with that, I'll preface it by saying that everything that we hear from the CDC is saying that people in this country right now are still considered to be at low risk.
Okay.
Right. Okay. I've seen that reported. Okay. Yeah.
So that's number one. But you wouldn't think that by listening to the media.
Right.
However, there are some teeth to that because this one is, I remember when we had SARS and we went through that. Yep. And they really hyped that up. And that one kind of just fizzled out. And
which was good.
It was good. Like the doctor was saying, I think this will do the same thing. However, in the meantime, you talk about the mortality of this disease versus SARS versus MERS versus the stuff we've seen in the past. It definitely rivals influenza, so you want to be careful.
Oh, yeah.
You can't. It's hard because I almost felt like this was one that was going to get poo-pooed.
Yes, and then all of a sudden, which it did in China initially. That's exactly what happened. It kind of got poo-pooed.
That's the Chinese government's normal stance is to ignore it until they can't.
And then the doctor who was kind of saying, "Hey, this is a big deal," is now gone.
Yep.
As in passed away.
Yep.
And some of the information that we're presented with from federal and state agencies we're not allowed to disseminate yet.
Okay.
So I can just say, without saying anything specific, I think right now, even though the media might be trying to hype it a little bit, it's appropriate at this time for the amount of time that they're spending reporting on it.
Yep.
I think it's good right now to be overcautious with this. And I didn't have that same opinion about previous viruses that we had to deal with, but this one, just with everything underlying it and so much uncertainty about it.
I think that's the key. You know, there's just so much about it that we don't know. I mean, there are some basic things about the way things spread, but, you know, as Dr. Lovelace was saying, we don't know if it has to be direct contact. Can you pick it up because, you know, somebody was sitting at this table having lunch and, you know, there's a lot that we don't know. And I think low risk is not the same as no risk.
Correct.
So,
and we did have a confirmed case in Massachusetts. So we're one of only, I think, 5 or 6 states that have seen positive testing for it.
Yeah.
The others there's Arizona, California, Illinois, Washington State, I believe, and then either Michigan or Wisconsin, one of those.
Yeah, so they're really kind of spread all over the place.
Yeah, in the Northeast, we're really the only one so far.
Yeah.
But well, that could be because of our college. I mean, we had several students that I know at Smith that went home for the holidays, and more than a few of them were in that region of China.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Pete, you brought up a really good point. We have a lot of international students.
Yeah, with the 5 colleges,
and the colleges in the Springfield area. I mean, you know, that's not unique. I remember when I was teaching at Springfield College, we had a large population, and it's not just the colleges. Some of the high schools do as well, and specifically from China. So, you know, I think that we need to be careful. We need to be cautious.
I think it was. I was very impressed with the way it was handled right out of the gate. Once it started to turn into an international issue.
Yeah.
However they dealt with it in China initially is none of my business, and I don't know the details. But as soon as the international health experts and they started to get a hold of it, whether it was the World Health Organization, the CDC, they did everything the way that they've been trained to do for years and years and prepare for this type of pandemic or epidemic. And so I was happy to see, especially one of the examples, I think I've mentioned this before on the show, where there's cruise ships that are out in the ocean. They're not allowed to come to land.
Right.
Because a large percentage of the people are infected.
Yeah.
So that goes back 400 years. So when the very first public health action taken in this country was in Boston Harbor, there was a ship that wanted to come aboard. It was noted that most of the people on board that ship had smallpox.
Oh, God.
And they were not allowed to land. They had to stay out at sea.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't just say, hey, stay there and die. I mean, they sent medical help out.
Yes.
But they would not let that ship dock in Boston Harbor because of that. So,
well, and you figure that in this day and age,
I never heard that story.
This day and age with airplane travel, it can be disseminated. Viruses can be disseminated so easy. Now it's the cruise ships that are holding back because they carry the large amount of people.
But, you know, here's the difference between a cruise ship and an airplane, because I just learned this fun fact, too, is like on an airplane, you're just recycling the same air.
Right.
On a cruise ship, I mean, you're out in the ocean, you know, so you've got
I mean, you have fresh air.
You do have some fresh air coming in.
But you have a lot of enclosed spaces and tight contact with people, too.
Of course, yeah.
There is that. And also the biggest risk on the cruise ships is, as we've seen from the norovirus, that actually was killing the cruise ship industry because there were so many cases of 80% of the people on the ship contracted this norovirus which was a gastrointestinal thing. It wasn't a respiratory.
Yeah.
But that was from environmental contact. So,
and I actually heard this morning on the way in, I was listening to National Public Radio, and they said as of this week, the cruise industry is taking a hit with this.
Time.
You know, they're really hurting. Joe, let's bring this. Can we bring this down to the local level? So let's talk. I think this is a great example of how does our local ours in particular, but any local public health department, how does all of this impact you? Like, how do you get information? When did you start recognizing that this is the potential to be a sort of a public health problem for the residents of Westfield. Like, let's bring it right into Westfield. So how does that kind of work? Because I think if you could kind of talk us through that, where does the information come from? Is it the federal government? Is this the state government? Is it who's, and you kind of have mentioned, getting some updates but just kind of walk us through that process, just so that we have an understanding of what our local public health department, kind of how they factor in with something like this.
That's good. And it'll make sense. But so one of the big things that we do is we monitor communicable disease in the community. So that means we get reports from doctors and hospitals based on laboratory confirmation that somebody has a communicable disease.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter what that is. It could be.
So give us some examples of some of the things you track.
It could be TB.
Okay.
It could be a foodborne illness.
Okay.
It used to be things like chicken pox, although we don't do that too much anymore.
Okay.
But it's all of those things that somebody would be obviously sick and go to their doctor.
Okay.
They get laboratory confirmation. They enter it into a system. The local where that resident lives that has the symptoms or the illness, their local board of health will get notified.
Okay.
Now, in this case, this is a bigger picture. It is still a communicable disease.
Right.
However, we didn't have any residents that were identified as testing positive.
Right.
What happens at that point is we get communication directly from the Department of Public Health at the state.
Okay.
When they recognize that there's a potential for some sort of serious outbreak of whatever the virus or disease is.
Okay.
They then link us up with the Centers for Disease Control if it's a national issue.
Okay.
If it were more regional, we would just exclusively deal with the Department of Public Health, but this one is a bigger issue than that.
Yeah, this is a big picture one.
So then what happens is you constantly get emails or it's basically emails, phone calls about, hey, there's going to be an educational webinar on this today at 1 o'clock. They'll have doctors from the state on there. They'll have epidemiologists talking about the spread, where we're at with positive cases throughout the whole country and not just the state. So what happens at that point is that we have to decide locally what's our role going to be in this. So if this really starts to spread and we start to see more positive cases in the Commonwealth or even regionally, we have to be ready to do like a mass sort of immunization if they come out with any sort of a vaccine or if they come out with any sort of a treatment.
Okay.
And that all gets handed down to the local level. The state doesn't come in and treat your residents. You have to do that.
Okay.
So fortunately, that's what we have nurses for.
Yep.
So right now, basically, we're getting all of our information, like I said, updated 3 times a week on this specific virus from the Center for Disease Control. The state Department of Public Health will also weigh in. They'll post certain things on a website that only we can see, so the public can't get access to that information, only because they don't want it to be disseminated inaccurately.
And I think that's key, because my initial thought was, well, wait a minute, you're going to have information that we don't have as the public. But I think part of the rationale for that would be that if I may be getting this information, I don't exactly know what it means, so it's my own interpretation because I don't have the background to know what it means. So as you said, Joe, that's your responsibility to make sure that information gets out to us in a way that we all understand, and we're all on the same page, and we're not, because that can really set in a lot of panic.
That's the second biggest role that we have in this as the local Board of Health, is to make sure that when the message needs to go out to the public or to the media, that it's being taken straight from the source through us, not straight from the source through the newspaper or the news or whatever. We need to be the ones that do press releases or post stuff on our website with links to accurate information for people. So there's that, and then also, like I said, the preparation of being ready. Right now we're doing inventory on all of our supplies to make sure we have enough masks, we have enough gloves, that we have space to house any sort of vaccination vaccines that we get from the state. So not to say, like I said, the risk is still low for everybody.
Yeah, of course.
But anytime there's something like this, especially with again the unknown factor of everything,
right?
We don't necessarily do this for the flu, even though that's a lot more widespread and a lot more prevalent.
Sure.
And equally as bad.
Yeah.
But it's become more like we do our flu clinics. You know, we do have a vaccine for that. So our role in this case, we don't have that. We can't advocate for that, so we have to be ready for a worst case scenario.
Right. And as we talked about before, when Dr. Lovelace was with us, was taking some of the same precautions that you would take for, to prevent getting the flu. Wash your hands. If you're sick or, starting to feel some symptoms, stay home so you're not spreading this all over the place. Right. All right, it is 7:47. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses. So I decided to do one Valentine's Day song. Well, this is actually in honor of Valentine's Day song. It's not really a love song per se, but it's I heard this on the radio the other day, and I thought, it's a great song to play right now. It's Jackie DeShannon's What the World Needs Now Is Love, because I feel like we really need that. So here you are.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for everyone. Lord, we don't need another mountain. There are mountains and hillsides enough to climb. There are oceans and rivers enough to cross, enough to last till the end of time. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for everyone. Lord, we don't need another meadow. There are cornfields and wheat fields enough to grow. There are sunbeams and moonbeams enough to shine. Oh, listen, Lord, if you want to know. That there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, oh, but just for everyone.
Support for community radio on WSKB is provided by Betts Plumbing and Heating Supply Company, an independent, family-owned wholesaler serving Westfield for over 50 years, specializing in plumbing, heating, and industrial piping supplies. On the web at bettsplumbing.com or at 14 Coleman Avenue in Westfield.
One of our underwriters here at WSKB's Community Radio is Carson Center for Health and Human Services, a nonprofit organization located at 20 Broad Street in Westfield.
They provided behavioral health and rehabilitation services in communities throughout Western Massachusetts since 1963. There are services for children, adolescents, adults, families, and couples. You can find them on the web at carsoncenter.org or at 413-572-4132.
Hi, it's Bob Plass, and I have Wow, It's Tuesday, every Tuesday, 6 to 8. Wow, it's Tuesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
I did
it! Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 7:52. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses. My name is Tina Gorman. I'm your Wake Up Wednesday host, and we are broadcasting live this morning from Westfield High School. We're sort of in the corner of the science fair. We're in the gymnasium. We have 156 science exhibits here, and the judges are coming in, and the students are starting to kind of wander in. I think I'm not sure what time the whole thing gets started. Probably 8 or 8:30, something like that.
Yeah, it's funny. Lauren Figge asked if I wanted to be out front this year, and I'm like, I don't think my cable will go that far.
Yeah, it's pretty
based upon availability of networks over here.
There it is.
So are you going to be here for the whole thing?
No, I'm just here till 10 o'clock.
Okay.
He's here till
Superintendent Spotlight likes to do whatever day the science fair is, so we moved a lot around to make that happen today.
Make it happen.
Good.
And yes,
so if you really want to see your chamber chatter, you can go on YouTube, and it'll be premiering at its normal time today, and then it'll run again on Friday.
Oh, good. I need that.
There
I know.
it is.
I have to have that.
Yes.
All right. Yes, because
That's
Chamber
big for
Chatter,
Kate,
Kate is here because she's a judge. I already saw her.
I know. We
there.
taped last week,
Yeah,
but she wanted to make sure she didn't lose her slot.
Yeah, there you
People
go.
see her then. So we
Absolutely.
move things around for her.
All right. My guest this morning is Joe Rouse, Director of Public Health for the City of Westfield. We have been talking about the coronavirus, but I want to switch gears a little bit because last month we were talking about the trials and tribulations of recycling right now.
Right.
And this is, and Joe and I were talking about this off air, but this is not unique to Westfield. All of the local cities and towns, I live in West Springfield. We had a big article in the West Springfield Record 2 weeks ago about it. It's been in the Republican. Springfield's dealing with it. What the heck is going on, Joe? And give us an update on recycling and the cost of recycling and how things have changed over the last couple of years.
Yeah, okay. So recycling for the city used to be a moneymaker.
Yes.
And we...
for lots of cities.
For lots of cities. And we even went as far up at our transfer station to get a cardboard compactor. There was a while when we first got that, and this was only maybe 5 years ago, where the value of that corrugated cardboard, and especially in a compacted load, was huge.
Yeah.
It was huge money. It made us good money. And slowly over time, especially when we switched over to single stream, you started to see single stream at the curb, you started to see the number, compensation from the recycling facility drop to the point where we got to zero. Okay, everybody.
So now we're not making anything.
Now we're not making
we're not
any
losing
money.
anything. We're on a break even.
And also our recycling percentage went up when we switched to single stream, meaning less things that are in the trash that were there before.
Right. And single stream, just for those listeners who don't know, so single stream is when you're throwing all your recycles in together. In the old days, we used to have to separate glass and plastic and paper, but single stream is you put it all together, which the theory behind that is that people will be better at recycling because they, as you said, Joe, they won't put it in the trash, they'll put it in the recycle. But of course, there's a cost to that because somewhere along the line, it's got to be sorted.
That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem.
So, and we thought we were doing a great thing, and it was good. It really did increase our recycling.
It met its goal at the time.
Definitely, and we were okay with zero, getting zero back from the facility. But then, the cost of labor. Because it does need to be hand sorted. The technology's not quite there yet for our type of recyclables that we introduce to have it be done by machines or, some of it is, but it's mostly hand sorted by people.
Wow, I can't even imagine that.
Well, it's better than hand sorting trash.
Yeah. But still.
The diapers go in this pile.
Right, exactly.
The tissues go in. So the recently with all of what happened, I heard we're talking about China.
Yes.
It's like, they used to accept all of that material, and they didn't care because it was really a money maker for them. They had plenty of room to get rid of it, and they just did it. And so it was still kind of a okay deal for us. They changed their whole domestic policy to stop being the dumping ground for the world. Okay, kudos to them. What that did, though, is it changed the whole market. It made the recyclable material not as valuable anymore, because now the remaining people want more pure material. The remaining buyers of recyclables want more pure material. So now we went from a cost of $0 up to as high as, effective this fiscal year, July 1st, up to $140 a ton, which is double what we pay for trash.
Okay.
So what it means is that all of a sudden this material that we used to think we were doing great, we were going to recycle everything, it's now going to cost the city twice as much to get rid of that as it does to get rid of our trash.
Ouch.
Per ton.
Yeah.
So fortunately, we generate less tonnage of recyclables than we do trash. So the bottom line will be bigger on the trash side, but the per ton charge is through the roof, and it came out of nowhere. It was just totally out of the blue. So and this was all to continue to take our recyclables to the same facility in Springfield that we had always.
Okay.
Recently, we found another facility that we negotiated a 3-year contract with, so that we're not going to have to pay the $140 a ton. They're a little bit cheaper.
Okay.
Still,
it's going to cost. It's going to cost the resident.
Still, it's going to cost hundreds of thousands.
It's not for free anymore.
It's hundreds
and
of thousands.
And it's definitely not a moneymaker anymore.
It's not.
So that's really a twofold thing. It's not just that that we're not making money. Now we have to pay money, so we're losing the revenue that we were bringing into the city on that side of it, and then of course we're paying money out on the other side. So
how much less? So how much are we saving on the trash side? Because now there's more recycling. Is there any reduction in that side?
That's a good question, Pete.
Because I know that the cost of hauling that tonnage has gone up a little bit too. Because I pay attention.
Right. No. So
that's a good point, Pete.
When we started to get more participation in the recycling program, we reduced our tonnage and trash by about 30%. So
there was some offset there.
So there was some cost saving.
Definitely,
on the trash
but that
side,
didn't last long, because then the trash prices per ton shot through the roof.
Because now they're transporting to farther away facilities and things like that.
All the landfills are closing, or closed, and so it's all going out of state now into upper New York State somewhere. But anyway, with the recycling, it's now not a moneymaker anymore. It still is the right thing to do for people. Don't throw it in your trash, because it's still a waistband item.
Yep.
The city is trying really, really hard to not pass that cost along to the residents. We do have a solid waste management fee, which nobody at this point wants to stand up and advocate for increasing. Although, as our costs increase, I don't see how it's avoidable.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's not a big amount either. We're talking about maybe $10 or $20 a year to cover our costs.
Well, and it's still a lot less than Springfield is 90 or something like that. They haven't raised it in years, but they imposed that when they went into receivership, basically. Well, they almost the city almost went into receivership. They're going, hey, we're going to do fees now, folks. Sorry.
I remember that.
And what people have to, and I mentioned this yesterday to Dave Billups. I said, I know people will complain if we have to raise the fee, but you know what? It's just like when my water bill goes up. I just have to pay. I need that.
Right,
I need water.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, what are you going to do?
You need your trash picked up. You need your recycling picked up. You need it. And when the prices go up, it's unrealistic for people to think your cost on a resident side is never going to change.
Right.
It has to.
It has to.
But we're trying really hard right now this year to not pass that along. Even though it would probably be the right, smart thing to do for the city's financial purposes, but nobody wants to make that call, including me. So
well, I get it, but you know what? Expect it, folks, because it's gonna have to happen down the road.
Yeah, unless something dramatically changes in the recycling market,
right. And it's not a luxury, as Joe was saying. This is a necessity. We have to have trash pickup, recycle pickup,
and people have to understand it's not the city's fault. It's not the city's decision to increase these.
And again, I want to point out, this is not unique to Westfield. You can pull up any local newspaper over the last couple of weeks from, whether it's the Hampshire Gazette or whatever. Every city in town is dealing with this because, without somebody wanting to take those recycles, it's a crunch for everybody. So, I know Westfield, always thinks that it's unique. Everything's unique to Westfield, but not everything is unique to.
That's because we live in a bubble here.
Not everything is unique, but all the cities and towns are struggling with this.
It's true, and some of
I
them,
imagine it's across the state. I don't know, but it's certainly in the Pioneer Valley, it's an issue.
Yeah, I know the city of Westfield's had working group meetings with the surrounding towns to say, hey, why don't we address this as a group?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. There were a lot of those collaborations going on.
Yeah, and usually that's because you can negotiate a better price if you're a collaboration.
Yeah.
So because they like to see a minimum number of tons come in.
Yeah.
And that was the way the facility was in Springfield. They wouldn't even sign a contract with communities unless they were guaranteed a minimum number of tons, obviously, so they can make money.
Absolutely.
So that was the negotiation process and to get everybody together.
Yep.
So we opted out of the one in Springfield. No more 10-year contracts. We're down to a 3-year.
3-year with
makes
Wilbraham.
sense.
Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, stay tuned, folks, because this is one of those topics I think will be updated periodically.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Rouse joins me on the second Wednesday of every month. It is the birthday of Abraham Lincoln today. It is February 12th. So I know, we were talking about back in the old days when I was a kid. We actually got the birthdays off of Lincoln
I remember
and
that.
Washington.
I
That
know.
was before they combined them and did the Monday in between, which is a better hit. So we are broadcasting live again from Westfield High School. We're at the annual science fair. I see.
You can see the superintendent in the camera
our
shot.
superintendent is in the bullpen right now. Stefan is kind of pacing.
I'm going to get
the
your
floor.
6:45 song in right now, so we'll finish.
Okay, perfect. So my
Doobie Brothers.
Oh, okay. Yep, there you go. That's right. This is in honor of the birthday of Mike McDonald. What a Fool Believes by the Doobie Brothers. Joe?
Stay healthy, my friend.
There you go. Have a good one.
He came from somewhere back in her long ago. The sound about the fool don't see, trying hard to recreate what had yet to be created. Once in her life, she musters a smile for his nostalgic tale. Never coming near what he wanted to say, only to realize it never really was. She had a place in his life. He never made her think twice. As she rises to her apology, anybody else would surely know. He's watching her go. What a fool believes he sees. The wise man has the power to reason away what seems to be is always better than nothing, and nothing at all. Keep sending him somewhere back in her long ago, where he can still believe there's a place in her life. Someday, somewhere, she will return. She had a place in his life. He never made her think twice. As she rises to her apology, anybody else would surely know. He's watching her go. What a fool believes he sees. The wise man has the power to reason away what love can come and love can go. I can't go.
support for community radio on WSKB